We're in the trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics. The Cincinnati Bengals continue day 2 of the 2024 training camp as they prepare for the NFL season. Joining us, Dave Lapham, who was at practice today. And Lap, the first thing we have to talk about is everyone, social media and so forth, is talking about, oh my goodness, Ja'Marr Chase did not practice today, but we kind of knew that Tee Higgins wasn't going to practice, but the Ja'Marr Chase not doing it was kind of a surprise, but really it shouldn't be, should it?
No, I think what's going on there is there are more deadlines in contract negotiations than there are holidays during the course of the year for the National Football League. I mean, I can't keep up with every deadline there is, but I think there is a deadline. You know, the deadline is passed for a tag with Tee Higgins. You know, so he's decided to take the tag and go and play on that $22 million contract this year. There's deadlines across the league for when you can pay out additional bonus money for this particular season to count against this season's cap, or be deferred to further seasons down the road in terms of cap. So I mean, there's just all kinds of dates, all kinds of deadlines. I do think that a deadline's rapidly approaching. In fact, I think there might be one tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, where you know, from a bonus standpoint, adding bonus money to a contract this year for cap reasons to be deferred or added to this year's contract, whatever the case may be, there's a deadline rapidly approaching. So I do think that probably the organization has probably said, look, you know, we got you for a couple of days, 3 days, whatever the case may be here, Ja'Marr. You know, the negotiation's ongoing. So it would not shock me if something were to happen even tomorrow or over the weekend, if not the weekend, early next week, whatever the case may be. I do think that something might be brewing there in terms of Ja'Marr Chase. So I do believe that's why, you know, he hasn't been out there taking any chances physically, you know, as such. And like Zach Taylor said, they have a plan in place for Ja'Marr, and there's no question if Ja'Marr Chase misses these first 2 days, it is no big deal whatsoever. It's not like he's going to be behind the 8 ball and not be able to catch up with what's going on. They're still in the basics of installation, and we talked about before, he and Joe Burrow, I mean, through college and in the National Football League, they've missed 10 games. You know, Joe Burrow was 10 games without Ja'Marr Chase, while Ja'Marr had one more year at LSU. I mean, these guys have a connection that is very, very deep. It's almost branded on these guys. You know, T, they're gonna do a real good job of monitoring these veteran receivers and you know, making sure that there's a plan in place that the not just preseason games, but the opening game of the season is first and foremost and paramount in everybody's minds for those guys to be ready for that. But with that said, Dave, I mean, there are receivers that have stepped up. With those two guys not going today, there were plenty of more snaps available from a rotation standpoint. And our old friend Trenton Irwin took full advantage. I mean, when opportunity knocks, Trenton Irwin always opens the door. And the guy made plays just like he always does. You know, Shedrick Jackson made one of the best catches of the training camp with the additional opportunity that he got, and he stepped up and made plays as well. Iosivas basically has, in my mind, shown brightly both of these two workouts. So you know, it's like everybody's saying, "Oh, who's going to play slot receiver?" Well, it's not just slot receiver and the number 3 receiver. I mean, the Bengals go 4 and 5 wides. So, you know, there are guys that are competing not just for the top 3 spots as such. And like we talked about, the 3rd spot, the slot receiver spot, and the 4th spot, which is probably another, you know, slot receiver potentially on either side of the formation, it's going to be done by committee. And it's going to involve, you know, running backs and tight ends and not just receivers potentially. So there's a lot of snaps to divide up, and guys are battling right now. And speaking of running backs potentially in the slot, Chase Brown, I'm telling you, Dave, this guy, he is so much better route runner than he was last year. He's really worked on it. You can tell. I mean, he's a much different looking guy in that way. And man, when you think, all right, going to have 4 receivers out there potentially with that field spread, he's either going to have a linebacker, the only linebacker on the field if there is one, or he's going to be matched up with a safety, that this kid is one of the fastest kids in the team, if not in the league. And his route running and getting in and out of cuts and doing that sort of thing is much better than last year. You can tell he's really worked on it. That's going to be a tough matchup weapon. There's no doubt. And you look at guys that took advantage of working hard in the off season and having it pay dividends now that training camp has started, Dave. Chase Brown falls into that category, and the others that have we talked about Mims and how his size and his movement skills are beyond words. Our man Orlando Brown has a lot of pride, Dave, as you know, and he's like, hey, this young guy, yeah, he's something special. He was down there every single day in the off season working with the strength and conditioning people, as was Hendrickson. And Hendrickson took a day off today. They didn't work him. He had a little minor problem with something with his chest, and so they basically said, don't exacerbate it, sit out today. But he and Orlando Brown, they worked out every day in the off season, Dave. They were down there all the time at Paycor, and they got a tremendous amount of respect for each other. And they were working out and pushing each other, and you can tell. I mean, it's carrying over onto the field. Trey Hendrickson showing that tremendous get off. I mean, Orlando Brown's moving as well as I've seen him move now, and he's in shape. He's still huge. I mean, these tackles are it's mind-boggling how these big men can move as fluidly and as freely as they do. But I mean, there's a lot of guys that worked real hard in the off season and already here in the early stages of training camp, it's paying off for them. It's paying dividends. And then finally, thinking about looking at what I'm seeing down there, they just have a lot of depth at every position group. And that's particularly true in the back end. They've got a lot of athletes back there. They got a lot of speed. They get a lot of athleticism. There's battles going on at every position group on this football team at a high level. I mean, it's not like, they're not battling to be the last of that's naturally going to happen. But I mean, there are battles going on, at a pretty high level. I mean, who's going to be the other starting cornerback? Who's going to be the nickel or dime person? And that's not as big a battle. I mean, they've got a veteran that has proven it over the years in that regard, but they have so much depth, and you're gonna get attrition at some position. Hopefully, not too many positions during the course of the season. But man, they've got personnel, Dave. I mean, it's a good football team. They should be in the hunt. There's no doubt.
It brings up a good point there, Dave, because I was going down to First Star Logistics today. I was listening to NFL Network radio on Sirius XM, and they were they had Rick Spielman on, who used to be a GM, and they were talking about the Minnesota Vikings have suffered, and one, they had a player pass away they drafted, and then they had a injury already first early in camp,
right?
And he was talking about how, hey, we're looking all the time. You are looking at who's going to get cut. What did we have on that player? Guys who may still be out there as far as veterans that didn't sign. Who can we trade for? And in today's world, as you know, and I think most fans know now, everything is put on tape. And every snap you take, no matter, you better bring everything you got on every snap, because everything can be seen. And when you get competition, and you talk about the wide receiver position, one, everyone's used to that 3 wide receivers. You talk about a Chase Brown coming up and possibly coming out of the backfield, being a slot guy. But you got, a Bengal. You talk about depth. The Bengals could run so many different formations out of the wide receivers because of the depth they've got. And the guys that may not make this team, they know they're fighting for a spot, trying to make a practice squad, which I love the fact that the practice squad has been expanded since COVID, because I think it gives guys more opportunity to keep developing their game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you mentioned, offensively with the diversity of the weapons. We talked about before how, Gesicki is very capable with his catch radius and, his long arms, and he runs well enough, and he can threaten the deep portions of the field and make contested catches. I mean, they can put him in the slot. Hudson, they can put in the slot. They've done that before. It's like you can line up with with three wides and two tight ends and an empty backfield. And then all of a sudden it's like you don't have any tight ends. I mean, you get five wides and it's an empty backfield. Or with Chase Brown, you can have two receivers, two tight ends, and you got 12 personnel going on, and all of a sudden you put you put Gesicki out wide outside of the receiver. You put Hudson in the slot, and you put Brown in the other slot, and you get an empty backfield. You get five wides, and the defense, they can't substitute because you didn't substitute personnel on the football field. If they try to run, linebackers off the football field and put more cover guys in, you get a quick snap, you get cheap 5 yards. I mean, they're kind of hamstrung there. So that versatility and diversity of that versatility, is a big deal. And watching Chase Brown run routes, I'm like, man, he's so much better. And I'm not saying he runs them as well as the wideouts do, but man, he compared to last year, he has really, really worked at it. I tip my cap to him. And this kid, as we know, he's already shown the ability to hit the home run. I mean, he caught a little pass over the middle yesterday, and boom, see you later. He was out of there. It was a big play, and he's shown that he can go to the house from 60 and 70 in the running game as well. He's another weapon. He's definitely got this football team can threaten you with speed, offensively and defensively. It's going to be interesting to watch them. And like you said, Dave, the offensive line. Talking about it again, I'm looking at Orlando Brown, and I'm looking at Mims, and I'm looking at how big they are and how well they're moving. And I'm like, gosh, man, every single year they get bigger, faster, stronger. I mean, it's unbelievable. And honestly, to me, it's like back in the 70s and 80s when we didn't have guys that big that could move like that. And the collisions that it causes, no wonder, there are injuries that go on. I mean, it's just sheer, body physics. These big bodies moving at the rate of speed they're moving. I mean, across the board, they're just the linebackers, size speed ratio wise, the edge guys. I mean, it's like, man, it's a lot of force there when you're full speed both ways, and the collisions are so violent. And it's like, man, can the human body hold up to it? Can the joints and the ligaments and everything hold up to it? It's almost like, man, the body's getting too big for the physics of the game. And in the 70s and 80s, there were a few freaks, but not as many across the board as there are now. And there's already been 2 ACL injuries, Dave, that I've heard about on NFL Network driving to and from practice. And I mean, it's in the early stages of training camp. And I think that's an example of it. I mean, the bodies just can't hold up to the size and speed and quickness of one body crashing with another. It's just a different dynamic. I mean, the game, they've almost gotten too big for the game. It's crazy.
Yeah, several years ago when Brian Kelly was the head coach at the University of Cincinnati, he came up to me. We were talking one time, and he said, Dave, this game has changed so much since I started coaching. It used to be you'd have a sprain. Every once in a while you have a knee injury, whatever. He goes, the size and speed that these players are becoming is going from minor tweaks and sprains to major injuries and broken bones.
Yep.
And I totally agreed with him. And this is several years ago. And they have just, as you said, players have continued to get bigger, faster, stronger. And when you look at guys, I mean, and you and I both, we love the trench play. We love watching in the trenches. And you see guys like Orlando Brown, who we love having on in the trenches with Dave Lapham when he comes on, and Ted Karras. And Ted's a munchkin compared to these guys. When you put him, next to Alex Kappa and Orlando Brown and Mims, and, you start seeing that's an advantage. If they can stay on the field and stay healthy, the Bengals have a huge advantage, because you're talking, as you've talked about many times since, the way this line's been formed, you're talking about guys who right now, when you look at, say, the projected starting lineup, other than Volson, you have veteran guys who've played high caliber football and won Super Bowls.
Yeah, and won Super Bowls and not just won them. and gone to the Pro Bowl. And I don't know if you saw the picture, Dave, but walking off the football field, they had a photo of Mims and Brown, both at 6'8", 3 feet, whatever, walking off the field with Zach Moss at 5'10",
Yes.
215 pounds. Now 5'10", 215, that's no midget, but he looked like their little son.
He looked like Kevin Hart, who's like 5'5".
Exactly. And it's like, man, these guys, it's not even these bigger, physically bigger running backs, physically bigger receivers, they can change direction on a dime. It's like, we had Pete Johnson, and he was a guy, that, I mean, he would just bull you. I mean, it was a straight line. He was a beast, but he wasn't going to make some of these cuts that these guys make. They're not as big as Pete Johnson was, but these guys that are 245 pounds that can change direction on a dime, and these big offensive linemen. I look at Mims and his ability at his size to change direction back inside, or to, kick and widen outside and flow freely. It's beyond words. You look at the size of the guy, and when he's out there by himself, you think, oh, how big is it? And then you see him with other people. It's like, this guy's huge, and he can move as well as anybody. And it really is. It's a heck of a thing watching the talent, and now that they're these first couple days here have been, nothing but, just helmets, and then they're going to go to shells, and then Tuesday is the first day of full equipment at training camp next week. But now with, just basically underwear ball, that's where the athleticism really shows up. I mean, it's like watching how big these bodies are, the body types. And then when the pads come on, man, that's going to be the next thing, because like we're talking about, the force of the hitting, and it, obviously it's not going to be game day, but there's going to be some pads popping now. I'm telling you, just because of the sheer size, speed, strength. I mean, it is mind-boggling. It really is.
You mentioned Trey Hendrickson not taking part today. That opens up opportunities. I would expect maybe Myles Murphy, Joseph Ossai getting those reps. How important will it be for those two players?
Yeah, big. I mean, I think these guys. Hopefully, Joseph Ossai has an injury-free season. I mean, he's been cursed, and Myles Murphy is going to get an opportunity to show himself as well. And year one to year two for Myles Murphy, it'll be not knowing what you don't know, and then being enlightened, and then applying what you learned. I'm very interested to see how these guys come off the edge. And you're right. Whenever one of the veteran players that they're going to be counting on is not out there taking reps, there's a trickle down effect. Everybody's reps. Everybody moves up. You get a chance to basically show that you can fill a void if in fact attrition knocks. So next man up. That's the way it is. And even if it's just for one practice, I mean, you don't necessarily wish anybody missing practice on anybody, but if somebody does miss practice, it's nature of the beast. You're fighting for a job, you're fighting for a role in the football team, and you're fighting to make the football team. Man, when opportunities of additional snaps show up in training camp, man, you got to capitalize, and that's what guys are doing today for sure.
I know everyone, and you brought it up, Dave. The cornerback position is one we're going to be watching all through camp. But when you look at the secondary as a whole, talk about, I mean, Tycen Anderson is a guy that I've always liked as a player, Ohio native, went to Toledo. I mean, and you talked about Osai's injury issues. Tycen Anderson, you can say the same thing about. He's been fighting injuries since he's became part of the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. And, you have to be, is it this camp so important for him to stay in the NFL or on this roster if with everything he's battled?
Yeah, I mean, he's in a dogfight. There's no doubt. Hill moving to cornerback, in my opinion, Dave, watching him has been a very, very smooth transition. I mean, he is a physically talented guy. He blew up a receiver screen from the cornerback position in today's action. If pads were on, it would have been a big tackle for loss. He read it and he closed now. He came downhill. He's got all the traits, all the physical talent in the world. And I think he's going to be playing with some confidence at that cornerback position. I think he feels like he belongs out there, and you're right. I mean, this in my mind, we've talked about this before. The comparison to in baseball, you want to be strong up the middle, catcher, shortstop, center field. Well, defensive tackle. There's some change there. I mean, guys move along in free agency, and others have to step up. When you're putting together your football team, you go out and veteran free agency, you get yourself players in the draft. And that's going to be interesting to watch how that defensive tackle position firms up. Who's going to make plays when their opportunity presents itself in a rotation, and how deep is it going to be? Will they be able to have an equal rotation? And then you look at the linebacker position, you feel pretty good. He's got guys that have done it and have done it for a few years together. And then you go to the safety position. All right, well, we've got some new players there. You got young players, you got veteran players added in free agency as well. What's it going to be like right up the middle of the football field? How cohesive is it going to be, from Jump Street day one? But I do, I feel like, man, again, there's a lot of players that can play. I mean, they've got roster depth at every single position, and that's always good to have. I mean, keep guys fresh during on a game-to-game basis. If you do suffer attrition, injury, you got guys you can roll in there, and everybody's role might change a little bit. But it's good to have numbers. It's good to have options. It's a good thing, even though it can be a trying thing when you're having to make cut downs. Man, we're letting a good football player go. Yeah, that's a tough thing to do, but it's a good problem to have, no doubt about that. And I think they're going to be that's going to be the situation, like you said, Spielman was talking about. Man, they're all these front offices and general managers. They know exactly who's on everybody's roster, and they're trying to project when guys might become available, which cut down might they become available, and how would that potentially affect their rosters. And that's one of the intriguing and interesting things every year of training camp that I enjoy watching, not only the Bengals, but other teams around the league, particularly the division opponents, how they're putting their football team together. That roster, assembling a roster is, there's a science to it, man. It's football science. It's pretty interesting.
You're in the trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics. We always have to say thank you to First Star Logistics for everything they do for us, bringing you in the trenches with Dave Lapham. And Lap, before we let you go, I want to talk a little bit about, I know it's early, only 2 practices in, but maybe some names people aren't even thinking about, or some guys like we talked about on that roster that are fighting for a spot that maybe have caught your eye early on in the first 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like when a guy today, like a guy like Cedric Jackson, he gets an opportunity as a receiver, and he goes out, he makes an unbelievably strong contested catch. It was just a great play. It was a great play if a multiple year Pro Bowl player made it. And Cedric Jackson, out of Auburn, he's college free agent last year, and he stepped up and made a play, and he made another catch that was, a good one. I mean, he had himself a solid day. So, when things like that occur, that's all you can do is the best you can do with the snaps that you're given. So I do think, Dave, that it's going to be interesting because this football team, it's a really good mix of youth and veteran players, but it's not like the over the hill gang, by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, if you've got 9 years in the league, like Von Bell does, you're the graybeard, you're the old man. There's not one person on the roster. Oh, there's one. I take it back. There's one on the roster right now out of the University of Florida, and that is Trent Brown. And right now he's on the non-football injury list, but he's going into his 10th year. And you know what, Dave? Looking at Trent Brown, this guy might be the biggest human being I've ever seen. I'm not kidding you. This guy, watching tape, I mean, for his size to move like he moves is unbelievable. I know he's battling something with his ankle or his Achilles or whatever. He's got some tightness in there, and I think he does. It would be beneficial to him to drop some tonnage as well. But man, this guy, watching him on tape, even at 385 pounds plus, it's like, look at this guy move. But that's he's the only player on the roster with double years experience. So if you're like a 7-year player, like Gesicki on this football team, you're a 7-year guy, or you're an 8-year guy like Trey Hendrickson. You know, it's like B.J. Hill's a 7-year guy. These guys are the veteran guys, you know, on the football team. Sheldon Rankins is in his 9th. But you have so many guys that are going into their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year that the team is going to be counting on, you know, to take that next step. You know, you know what the floor is, but you don't know how high the ceiling is with some of these guys. The longer you're in the league, you know, you're closing in on the ceiling, and the ceiling's not that not that high anymore. But you know, a lot of these guys obviously have played at a good level, a high level, or they wouldn't be in the league. We're talking about, like we mentioned earlier, the offensive line has 4 players that not only went to the Super Bowl, won it, and played in the Pro Bowl as well. So I mean, they succeeded both individually and as a team at the highest level you can succeed at. And you know, that's what you play the game for. So this is a very interesting mix of players, and you know, it's going to be tough, Dave. Even some of these young guys that you think, man, this dude belongs. Unfortunately, he belongs in the NFL, but you know, with the talent they have here, it might be with somebody else in the National Football League, because you know, at his position group, they're already pretty stacked, pretty stocked. So it's, again, a good problem to have, but it can be a problem for sure.
You've been in the trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics. Lap, always a pleasure talking with you, especially talking Cincinnati Bengals football. Look forward to talking and catching up again after another practice.
I'll tell you, Dave, it's fast and furious now. They're here we go. Before we know it, they're going to be playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in preseason game number 1 at Paycor Stadium. I mean, it's almost like, man, you blink your eyes and it's going to be here.
He's Dave Lapham. You've been in the trenches. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share Dave Lapham in the Trenches on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, Hooday.
Hooday, Dave.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.